Global Currency Reset, Events of the Last 10 Days. By Judy Byington. June 17, 2016. Website: childabuserecovery.com. Produced by Higher Self.
From the Federal Reserve to a new U.S. Republic via a global currency reset. Events of the last 10 days. 1. On June 10, 2016, Friday, Landa China Global received 3 tranche alert notifications, the initial funding for their humanitarian prosperity packages. Landa now had access to quadrillions for humanitarian projects. 2. The RV was expected to happen in the US when China transitioned to a gold-backed currency. Around the first part of June 2016, U.S. Treasury Secretary Jack Lew was in China, where he agreed to a June 15 transition date. Though scheduled for June 15, 2016, that transition was said to have actually taken place on Sunday, June 12. 3. On Sunday afternoon, June 12, Republic President General Joe Dunford and USA Incorporated bankruptcy figurehead Jack Lew arrived in Reno on Air Force One with full surrendered release documents regarding U.S. Treasury control over to the new Republic Treasury. 4. On that same Sunday, June 12, the new U.S. Republic Treasury was hydrated with gold and asset-backed U.S. notes to cover a 10-year budget plan that fixed the country's infrastructure and basic operational needs. At the same time, China also transitioned to a gold-backed currency, as did the rest of the global currencies in the BRICS system. 5. Wells Fargo Corp was authorized to release the RV kickstarting the global currency reset on Sunday night, June 12, 2016. Wells Fargo would hold back the release pending certain political events. 6. The bankruptcy on May 2, 2016 of the United States of America Corporation was being felt in increasingly obvious ways. On Sunday, June 12, Hazarian mafia bosses ended their meeting at the Bilderberg gathering in Dresden, Germany. Nathaniel Rothschild was said to preside over that meeting on behalf of his uncle and top Hazarian mafia boss Baron Jacob Nathaniel Rothschild. 7. CIA officials said that nobody was answering the phone at official Rothschild family companies, nor at their family complex in Zug, Switzerland. Considering the closure of the Rothschild offices in England, Japan, and elsewhere, it was guessed they were in Switzerland with England's gold reserves. If that was the case, it meant that the Rothschilds no longer controlled the Bank of England. 8. The British military had been removed from protecting the Royal Mint, where England's gold was stored. The military was replaced with a private security company known as G4S. This was the scandal-plagued company that botched the security for the London Olympics. It was also where the so-called shooter in Orlando used to work. 9. Pentagon sources said U.S. forces were evacuated from Germany's Ramstein air base in order to shut down Bush cabal drug trafficking there, and thus cut off their funds. 10. By now the European financial system was about to collapse. 11. On June 14, 2016 Tuesday morning before markets opened in Europe, the London Gold Exchange, BOC, and OPEC Oil Exchange, HSBC, was scheduled to be surrendered to the Chinese elders, but the transfer was held up because of political turmoil. 12. On that same Tuesday, June 14, negotiations for a new financial system in the U.S. went on hold as cabal controllers of the old system went into hiding. There was a chaotic situation in the United States, Middle East, and Europe. The May 2, 2016 bankruptcy of the Western financial system had affected social and economic stability that had yet to be reported by the mainstream media. 13. Late Tuesday, June 14, and in spite of the chaos, or perhaps because of it, Iraq was said to have paid out all citizens at the same rate across the country. The new rates were retroactive back to 2013. 14. Also on Tuesday, June 14, a large shredding truck was parked in front of the U.S. Federal Reserve Building in New York. Big shredded truck just spotted in front of the New York Fed. 15. Globally, the Federal Reserve US dollar was now being ignored as the new US Treasury notes activated in the global monetary system of BRICS. 16. From Monday, June 13, through Tuesday, June 14, major funding moved into place in preparation of a global currency reset. 17. On Tuesday, June 14, many wondered what was going on at the U.S. Treasury when President Obama made a Islamic terrorist speech as the new Republic President General Joseph Dunford and U.S. Treasury Secretary Jack Lew stood alongside. Everyone standing next to Obama, including Lew, were anticipating him to announce the new U.S. note currency circulation as per a signed treaty. The treaty gave the new Republic Treasury control of printing the nation's money again, this in place of the private, illegal, bankrupted and already fully transitioned Federal Reserve Bank. Obama's failure to make the announcement delayed release of the RV. 18. Jack Lew had made a pre-taped announcement that could air at any time per the emergency broadcast system if need be. However, that was not the optimal strategy for the Chinese elders who, for legal reasons, insisted on an overt transition statement and/or confession for the public record. 19. In view of Obama's reluctance to make the announcement, on Wednesday, June 15, at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time, China announced it was 100% gold-backed, which happened on June 12. 20. On Wednesday, June 15, the Paris Agreement, which included the Global Gold Treaty, was formally put in force for all sovereign nations. Officially, the Paris Agreement was on climate change, but had in it the framework for the Global Gold Treaty and currency reset. The agreement had been passed by 194 countries. A total of 196 countries had agreed when China finally signed. 21. The new U.S. note was tied directly into the global reserve currency implementation. If the Paris Agreement was to be put into force 13 days after it was ratified by 55 countries representing 55% of global carbon emissions, then all 195 nations had to be 100% compliant, including our own Republic of the United States. 22. The U.S. Inc., also known as the Federal Reserve, had defaulted back on May 2, 2016. With China going gold-backed with their currency, the BRICS system was now in full force for all 196 countries. 23. Implementation of the Gold Treaty not only meant a global currency reset, but a new republic for the U.S. Under the agreement, everything was to conclude by June 15. This meant the new U.S. note must be released as bills had already been preloaded in ATMs. 24. By that same Wednesday, June 15, all necessary global monetary change agreements had been signed. Information over the last 2 weeks indicated that the global currency reset and receiving of 800 numbers for those holding foreign currency redemptions was an imminent event. Why? Because the Chinese had always said that either all nations go, or none go, and the nation of China had already gone. America would be next. 25. On June 15, the IRS and U.S. Treasury were officially turned over to General Dunford and the new U.S. Republic. 26. By not making the announcement on Tuesday, USA Incorporated President Obama had lost his chance to reveal the global change to gold and asset-backed currency, the expected change in the U.S. tax system, and to reveal the new U.S. Republic. This reluctance by Obama triggered a forced rollout of the global currency reset. 27. Also, in view of Obama's reluctance to reveal the fall of the Federal Reserve note, now announcement of the new gold-backed U.S. Treasury note would likely be made through a top-level spokesman like U.S. Treasury Secretary Jack Lew. 28. Early Thursday morning, right after midnight, at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, June 16, 2016, Jack Lew made a public statement that was taped, delayed, and carried on C-SPAN later that morning. In this announcement, Lew said that USA and China were putting the Paris Agreement in force. This put gold-backed currency into effect worldwide. 29. Also on Thursday, June 16, Speaker of the House Paul Ryan made his weekly address. In that speech, Ryan proposed that Obamacare be appealed and replaced. He also suggested that the IRS be abolished and replaced with a non-negotiable flat tax that included a consumption tax on new goods, but not on used goods, or basic essentials like food and medicine. In the new tax structure, old tax system loopholes were to be closed, and everyone would pay their fair share. 30. On June 15, Pentagon Chief of Staff General Joseph Dunford had officially been put in as the new president of the new U.S. Republic. With the new U.S. Treasury in charge, these proposals had a chance for success. 31. There would be no public announcement about the Federal Reserve and IRS termination until after the November elections, though both agencies had already been reformed. The media wouldn't be reporting this because the powers that be didn't want to scare the markets. 32. However, by Wednesday night, at midnight, June 15, final negotiation teams had met in Beijing and Reno to conclude agreements. By early Thursday morning, June 16, 2016, in place was the new Chinese Elder gold-backed BRICS system. The U.S. would no longer return to the old fiat money system. 33. The Paris Agreement had been ratified. All final military, diplomatic decisions were implemented, including those involving oil in Brazil and Venezuela. The Vatican, Cabal, and U.S. had been put on notice that there would be no more games. The Chinese elders now controlled all bond and equity markets.
A couple of links that were in the article can be found down in the description box.